So there was a request to talk about the fourth foundation of mindfulness, which in retreats, even in our 2-week retreats, because there's a big changeover, we go back to the first through the third, and that sort of covers most of the retreat if we spend 2 days on the body and maybe 2 on feelings, because they're so important. So, fourth foundation of mindfulness. What is it? So, in the first 3, the emphasis is on knowing experience as mental objects. That's sort of one way to talk about it, right? Which is that something arises and then we know the particular qualities of that arising, and whether it's a body sensation or whether it's the feeling of pleasant, unpleasant or neutral, or if it's an emotion or thought or karmic formations, that we know them arising. The Buddha says to know them, and we know when they're not there, and that we also know or are mindful of when they're not present, right? So it could be that when we are aware of what's happening in the feeling, emotional thought arising, we could be aware both of what's there and what isn't there. Oh, there isn't any anger present in the moment. Oh, there isn't contentment. And that really creates some depth in more precise noticing, to notice what is present and what isn't present. And we've also, that's enough of that. In the fourth foundation, we're not just noticing what's arising, we're acknowledging it with reference to particular frameworks. And the Buddha offered these very key frameworks in the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And so it's sort of like, as I said, you can check it out. So the first are the hindrances, right? And then there are the 5 aggregates. And then there are the 6 sense spheres. And then there's the 4 noble truths. So then what does that mean? It means when I notice, I'll go a little bit more into detail of the hindrances just as a beginning. When I notice there's a wish for pleasure, like wanting some kind of sensual pleasure, body pleasure, taste pleasure, hearing pleasure, seeing pleasure. In the third foundation, I notice that as wanting. In the fourth foundation, I notice it as a hindrance. And the same is true then of, what's the second hindrance? Aversion, ill will. The third? You can unmute yourself. Sloth and torpor. Fourth? Anxiety and restlessness. No, seriously, are you all like, what is she talking about? I know I don't often talk about the hindrances, but I talk about them as wholesome and unwholesome energies. So, okay, well then I'm happy to be talking about them. And what's the fifth? You maybe all know the fifth.
Doubt.
Yes. Doubt. So it's like when you're driving and you come to a town, you notice, oh, we're at Seattle. And then the difference between that and then placing it in the map of the United States. Oh, in relationship to this and this and this, right? So it's giving a context to the experience. And so then let's just take a moment to start with the hindrances, and you know, how we understand it more contextually. And I want to say that there's something just not very inclusive about that word. It has its uses, but it also can very easily become the condition for shame. And that's why I like to give that first Dhamma talk. I always give it in every retreat, which is when we're in the experience, wiring, or manifestation of ignorance or homelessness or inadequacy or insufficiency, or when those, we could say, are triggered, when they become more intense, and that whole system of expression is arising, then the hindrances make sense. So I just want to say that as old defense mechanisms. So why do we go into movements and moments and times of sloth and torpor, or anxiety and restlessness, or doubt, or craving and sensual desire or aversion? Why? Not because we're bad people. Because that movement makes sense when we consider this larger framework of when we're not in the space of mindfulness and faith, or friendship and caring, then automatically we're in this place of not connected and dislocated. And in the disconnection and dislocation comes these misguided energies of trying to take care of ourselves. It makes sense to me that if I'm already in dis-ease without mindfulness, I would want to have sensual pleasure, and I would want to protect myself from everything unpleasant through pushing away an aversion. It's sort of like that, you know, when we're in relationship, let's say like right now we're in some kind of community together. And then imagine you are caught by yourself somewhere with no support. It's easy to understand why in being alone, not choosing to be alone, consciously, but being alone, and I'm not saying when we're alone this is true, because I'm going to be alone for 6 months, but when we're lonely and there's no sense of context, how easy it is for the mind to go into that particular operation. It's sort of like choosing war over diplomacy. That's what our bodies are doing in a way, but not quite so intensely, or a little bit. Because those energies, while we understand them, bring harm. And so in a way it's like going to war, because we've forgotten about diplomacy. So then let's see, where am I on this? I'll go back, but I wanted to just say a couple of other things that I didn't include. So not only should I? Or maybe I'll go, maybe I'll come back to it, what I left out. I wanted to read, though, what Analia says about the importance of recognizing these energies and how they don't provide an access or clarity for the path. And this is from the Anguttara Nikaya. So a passage there demonstrates the importance of clearly recognizing what are, so this is, it feels like male in a way, but it's all just to call them mental defilements. Let's talk about them as confusions of the mind. So to recognize confusions of the mind for what they are. This discourse reports the monk Anuruddha, who's like really often quoted in the suttas, complaining to his friend Sariputta that despite concentrative attainments, unshaken energy, and well-established mindfulness, he was unable to break through to full realization. In reply, Sariputta pointed out that after Anuruddha talked more in detail about his practice, that his boasting of concentration attainments was nothing but a manifestation of conceit. His unshaken energy was simply restlessness, and his concern about not yet being awakened was just worry. Helped by his friend to recognize these as hindrances, Anuruddha was soon able to overcome them. So you recognize this kind of particular framework, charge ahead and overcome, and achieve realization. This technique of simple recognition, this is what I love, constitutes an ingenious way of turning obstacles to meditation into meditation objects. Practiced in this way, bare awareness of a hindrance becomes a middle path between suppression and indulgence. Several discourses beautifully illustrate the powerful effect of this simple act of recognition by describing how the tempter Mara, who often acts as a personification of the 5 hindrances, loses their power as soon as they're recognized. So this general framework as this general framework, and that yesterday I talked about stealing, and yes, that wanting for something. I clearly understand it as an uneducated response to the pain that I was living with. And so no shame or blame or no judgment when we find ourselves in these energies, beginning to discern when you notice them there, putting them into this framework of the 4th foundation. Oh, these are the confusions of the mind, misunderstandings of where our path is. And so it's said that when sensual desire begins to diminish, then the condition is for concentration to be able to grow and strengthen. And in a way that makes sense, because sensual desire is this energy of moving out, right? Of like, oh, I need to alleviate what's happening. I have to move out and I have to get this and this. And so the mind can't collect itself and be settled. So the central desire is one of the main, makes concentration inaccessible. And then aversion makes joy inaccessible. And that kind of makes sense too, right? Because when you're in this pushing away, there's no field for joy, that connection to what is. And then sloth and torpor don't allow that initial application. So, initial application, the focus on whatever you are noticing in your experience, that initial connection with your experience, sloth and torpor doesn't allow that to happen. So that makes sense, because when we're in sloth and torpor, I found that myself. Like, I love my nap in the afternoon because often I don't sleep that much at night. And I notice when I get up how slothful my mind is and how difficult it is actually to make a connection. And now I know, even if I just have 5 minutes of walking in my living room, it just helps me come back into that. So, and then restlessness makes it difficult to feel happy, for happiness to arise. And that, restlessness and anxiety. And then doubt makes sustained application difficult to arise. And that makes sense too, because doubt is a form of a kind of restlessness where there isn't that faith in what I'm doing is healing, and I can relax into it and settle into it, right? And in that settling is sustaining a connection to whatever experience is happening, breath, body, eating, whatever it is. So when in the fourth foundation, then it isn't just that we, like in the third foundation, when we notice, oh, this is anger, this is the quality of anger. It's like, oh, this energy, if I support it and feed it and don't recognize it, actually becomes, it doesn't support the wholesome factors from arising. Specifically joy. And that it, along with the others, constitutes an inaccessibility to the deepening and opening and freedom of our hearts and minds. And so when we put it in that framework, then it makes sense how helpful it is, at least some of the time, to do that. And it might be helpful then in acknowledgement of, say, the hindrances, that there is this special invitation for those wholesome relations. So, if we notice that we're wanting, there's agitation in wanting, then calling in, oh, may I gather my energies? Am I able to renounce because I know this is a hindrance, and gather my energies? Or am I able to acknowledge that the issue isn't my wanting, but the issue is the feeling of disconnection, of the lack of acknowledgement that I'm living in relationship to the earth, to the community, to the trees, to the everything, everything that we're in relationship to. My pet, my plants, my teachers. And that instead of using judgment or willpower, now I have to get rid and overcome the hindrances, it's more like, oh honey, yeah, this dislocation, these defense, I want you to know here is what you really want. And of course, there's always caring in that. Having said that, there are times when that languaging has been really helpful. So when I have felt overwhelmed, like overwhelmed with aversive thoughts or blame, then I actually do just like absolutely not Arinna cut. Like it's so, my mind is so caught with one of the hindrances, acknowledges that the hindrance, but so caught, then I have to sort of use that overcoming framework of no way, I'm not letting this continue to run my mind. And so then I have this image of myself as an Amazon warrior with a sword, and I'm like, cut those thoughts, cut those energies. You absolutely cannot go there anymore. And I'll take more radical steps for the overcoming, like stand on my head, have a cold shower if it's hot in the summer, like stand on one leg, and keep standing on it over and over again, because otherwise, I'll fall. So things like that really pull the mind away, and just to have to keep doing that over and over and making a very emphatic commitment. So in that sense, then that languaging, it feels helpful. So then I just wanted to, because I know I have to end a little early because we're doing interviews, I just wanted to then go through that when we've recognized and acknowledged the confusions of these energies and how they don't support us on the path of well-being, then the next invitation is to look at the 5 aggregates, which are described as expressions of our personality. So the ways that our physicality and feelings and perception, karmic formations and consciousness are patterned and work in the particular ways they do for each of us. And when that's acknowledged, then that creates the base for discerning the 6 sense bases. How am I, once I'm noticing the pattern of the aggregates, how am I making contact with the visible object? And what is my perception? And what kinds of thoughts come from that? So creating the grounds for that. And then once all those are understood, then the 4 noble truths as a contemplation have the conditions to be fully realized. And so that's the development of the contemplations of the 4th foundation. I hope you have fun. And of course, having said that, as either as contemplations or in your practice, the support is also discerning what is most helpful for my mind. It might be to drop all of that and just come to the simplicity of the body as the first foundation, and to gather that way. So you can, what's lovely about this is that you all get to discover what does work for my mind. I love the big picture, So I love the fourth foundation because this is a big picture kind of space, and I love maps for helping me to know where I am. So it's always been helpful for me. So you can see for yourself if that's true. Now just have a silent practice with maybe 1 minute of invitation to appreciate yourself for being on retreat, for listening to the calling of your heart and your wisdom, recollecting joy, having joy in our beautiful qualities, in our wisdom. And see if you can relax a little bit into that appreciation, into that joy. I'm on retreat, learning to heal. That's so beautiful, to learn, to discern. See how that appreciation feels around your heart, what sensation. You might even invite it to expand, letting it permeate the body. Just the invitation is fine. Inviting a relaxation into the support that my words and the earth are giving. As though you had just turned on your favorite music, or there was a beautiful silence. Let the listening happen into the sensations of your body. Maybe taking a place that's neutral, like the touch of cloth against your shoulders. Or how the cloth is touching your thighs. How the universe is breathing us. Not me or mine, breath coming in the way it does, hard or short, soft or long. Being visited by breath. Notice the quality of your awareness. Of your faith, placing yourself in the wiring of presence as home, listening as home. Trusting. making the connection to our experience, our breath, or the touch of cloth or sound, and sustaining that connection, building a relationship. Thank you.